There are many ways to win a basketball game. Some are with fluidity, some are with finesse, some are with power, some are rebounding, and some are assists, some are with ball movement. Tonight, Matthew, I got to say, this is one of those games that the Suns won purely with grit because it really felt like this was a choppy game. And by the fourth quarter, when the Suns are up by 21 points, you kind of had to question yourself, how did we get here tonight?
Yeah, I know. It was kind of like last night. I was like, how do we get there when we lost? How are the Wolves still hanging on? How are they still there? Last night, that was the question. Tonight, what should have happened last night happened tonight. And that might have been confusing for all of y'all, but what should have happened last night should happen tonight. So,
Suns win.
Suns. Good job, Suns. You made us happy tonight. We can relax and enjoy Friday night, right?
This is true because it didn't feel like it was going to go that route in this game. Monty Williams gets ejected for the first time in his Phoenix Suns career. Devin Booker is chipping and jarring with the refs once again, and he gets another technical, his 9th on the year, which is tied for second in the NBA with Dwight Howard, and I forget the other guy. So it's really just kind of interesting to see how ultimately this team was steadied by the hand of Chris Paul, and Phoenix prevailed over the worst team in the NBA. We'll look back on these two games against the Timberwolves, and I don't know how we're really going to respond to them. What did we learn? What did we, and I guess that'll be the first question I ask you on the other side of our intro is, what did we learn? What are our takeaways from these two games against the Minnesota Timberwolves? So don't answer that yet, Matthew. I know you're eager. I see you chomping at the bit there.
No, I was burping. That was a little burp.
Just a little micro burp there.
Yeah,
good
micro
way
burp.
The show, a little micro burp and such. But I'll ask you that on the other side of the show. But before I do so, I first and foremost would like to welcome everybody to the Suns Jam Session podcast. I'm John. I'm the J in Jam, and Matthew. He's Matthew. He's the M in Jam, and we're excited that you're joining us for another edition of our podcast. Whether you're listening on the Bright Side of the Sun podcast network or you're watching along live on Facebook, Twitter, or YouTube, wherever you are, thank you. It's been a wild ride these past couple days. And, now it's time to kind of break down what we saw as we look forward to Sunday when the Suns play the Lakers. So, again, if you're watching along live with us, go ahead and subscribe. We're getting ever so close.
Almost at 900.
Almost at 900 subscribers. We've come a long way since we started actually doing the video version of our podcast this past November when the Suns season began. So subscribe. We appreciate it. Hit the thumbs up button. We appreciate it. If you're listening along on the Bright Side of the Sun podcast network, please subscribe, rate, and review. If you're listening to this while you're taking a shit, just take the time. It doesn't take that long.
Take that 30-minute shit and sit down.
Yeah, and just do it.
Stay seated when you take that shit.
Yeah, don't stand up. Don't stand up.
Take that.
I always wonder that. Like, I've had friends who play in fantasy football, and they always complain. They're like, listen, I don't have the time to set my lineup, John. I just can't be that engaged in this league. I'm like, do you ever shit? It takes 5 seconds to pick up a shitty running back.
Not enough time for that either, I guess. They're just not good enough friends. Kick them out.
I guess not.
Kick them out of the league.
Out of the league. Deserve it. For real, though. It's ridiculous. So, but I think I'm going to pop something open. It's going to be nice.
One too.
Pop it open, Matthew.
You hydrated tonight? I'm actually going to drink one.
Good. Yeah, I'm
just
glad
one
that
beer.
one of us
Friday night
is carrying on the tradition of drinking during the podcast. I work again tomorrow, and I work outside, and it's warm, and I'm running around, so gotta hydrate.
Hangover.
Hell no.
God damn it.
So you don't hang over. You pop that open.
We'll pop this bad boy.
There we go. Drink them if you got them, Suns fans. Let's talk about this victory over the Minnesota Timberwolves. The second game of a back-to-back against the Minnesota Timberwolves finds the Phoenix Suns ultimately walking away with a victory in their pocket, Matthew, as they beat the Timberwolves by a score of 113-101. So again, I kind of talked about it on the front end of the podcast, but what are your takeaways from this game, from this little series that we had against the Minnesota Timberwolves?
Well, I thought I learned a lot, and so Coda Kids just said that he takes 40-minute dookies. So that's the one thing I'm going to take away from tonight in the Suns' victory is that one thing.
It's impressive. Way to go, Coda Kid.
Yeah.
You're a champ. You have numb legs.
What I learned is this game was kind of like an insanity kind of game for the Suns. There was a lot of the same stuff coming back to haunt them. DeAndre Ayton getting in foul trouble, which was just, a naughty thing for DeAndre Ayton to do. We'll talk about the rest later, but I think that we learned that there's still a lot of growing for this team. Especially Booker, when it's in situations where your coach is already kicked out of the game, to keep your head level and just not get that technical foul. Maybe it's something Booker just needs to get his game going, is a technical foul. So I'll probably just leave that alone because we knew it was all coming. So I learned that that's just never going to change. But we have Chris Paul, and I am thankful for Chris Paul. Even when he gets hit in the head, he still stays level-headed. And that's what I learned from tonight. That is one thing that he will do, is just stay level-headed, keep his focus on his players, keep his focus on the ball, not touching the ball when the ref throws it to him to save some time to get his guys lined up, because he's focused on the game plan. And he will never let anything throw that off. So that's what I enjoyed watching that tonight. Chris Paul doing that.
Yeah, his leadership again shines through, especially in these trying and turbulent times for the Suns, because these are things we've seen before for Phoenix. And I tweeted it out during the game about how I remember when the Suns were just getting consistently raped by the referees during the Igor Kokoshkov season, when you had DeAndre Ayton as a rookie, and they couldn't get the calls. And I remember Burns and Gambo having a bet on the air that Kokoshkov would get a technical foul within like the next 5 games. They did one of their lunch bets.
Yes,
and Gambo was like, he's got to, like, they're getting so screwed, and he just would be sitting on the sideline, arms crossed, just kind of looking puzzled at the referees. Out. Yeah. And it was almost embarrassing. I would pray that he would just get a technical foul to show his team, like, I care. I see that you're getting screwed, and I care enough to go ahead and risk a little bit of my hide and some of my cash, and I'm going to put myself out there. And he never did it. And it was so frustrating. And tonight was another one of those games where, and 2 in a row against Minnesota. And I think that's in a long way to answer my own question that I asked you, what am I going to take away from these 2 games? I don't know, because a lot of these are going to be tainted by the refereeing of these games. I don't like to blame the refs. I've said that time and time again, but every now and then it's just like, there becomes this personal vendetta with the egos of some of these referees against players in the NBA. We're not the only team that this happens to. I've told people before, I think I was actually on the Valley podcast, and I was talking about how there's no system in place meant for actually training referees to be successful. It's run by old ex-referees. They're like, listen, here's what you're going to do. You're going to blow a whistle, and no matter what, you are infallible, my friend. And he's like, You mean I can make a wrong call and nobody will get mad? It's like, oh, the fans will get mad, but if they review anything, like, you still are going to just stick with your original call. And that's kind of how this game and the last game really kind of felt in moments. And Monty had enough of it. And it was nice to see him not only get fired up, yell enough to get teed up again and thrown out of the game, but then go back for some more. He's like, you know what? I'm going to let and this is Monty Williams we're talking about, Matthew. This is Monty Williams, calmed, cool, collected, very easygoing demeanor, very precise in his words. I would have loved to hear what he said. Man, the one thing,
me too.
Not the one thing, but one thing I am very disappointed with the coaches having to wear masks is you can't read their lips.
Yeah, the lip reading, and also the fans sitting close can't really hear what they're saying. But I mean, so Cat and Edwards, they both had 40 points last night, right?
Yeah.
The rest tonight, 38 fouls called. So basically, Cat going into this game, he's like, we have to be 2 times or something better going into this game if we're going to beat the Suns again. But the rest are like, no, hold on. We're going to be 2 times worse tonight, to where Matthew, myself, I never get really that upset about the reffing, but for both teams, it was just garbage. It was trash. It was the worst thing I've seen. When Monty got that tech, I was behind him on that one. I was getting up from my couch, creeping to the TV to see that exchange between him and the refs. Don't cut to the commercials, because I want to see this, because it's going to be worth it. Yeah, you can see Chris Paul looking over, egging him on just from behind, just staring down the back of his neck to Monty, just give him that extra energy to get kicked out of the game, because it was needed. It didn't change anything really. The Suns did go on a nice little run, but the rest still sucked the rest of the game. They were still going to call their terrible game. Even I thought they even missed a lot of calls. The calls I thought they should have called, they didn't call. The stupid little fouls that they called were, they were unexplainable to me in a way. So it was nice for the refs to show up and almost call 40 fouls. I mean, that's great. That's why I watch basketball, because I want to watch the referees with their little tight outfits running around with their little stupid whistles, blowing them whenever they can. It's the dumbest thing, and it needs to change. I know we're not the only podcast talking about this. Every podcast, mainstream pods, go off about refs, well, at least once a week.
Yeah.
So that has to be looked at. And for some reason, we're still in 2021, right? The year 2021. And we're still looking forward to the next off season where the refs and the front offices and the league itself can actually fix what is going on and what is destroying the game from being great, because it's already great. We got stars. We got the best players on the planet right now. It's never been better in a long time. So why have the refs step in the way to trip these guys up whenever, it's a good game, there's a good flow? So that's one thing that needs to be fixed. And who knows if it will be. There might be a little tweak here and there, but there's always going to be issues. So that's the frustrating part.
No, I agree, and it's tough because it's human error. Like, how do you truly perfect that? You really can't. I think a lot of the national pundits are really complaining about the pace of play in the game and how the last minute of a game can take up to 19 minutes, like it did against the Knicks and the Nets last week. I mean, there's a lot of things that need to be perfected, and this obviously isn't anything new to Suns fans. This happens to us, and I'm sure it happens to every fan base all the time, where you feel like you never get the calls. You feel like it's you against the refs and the opposition. And it's interesting because I have some friends who are actually Minnesota fans on Twitter, and you read their Twitter feeds and they're even in the same boat. They're like, wow, that wasn't a call. And like when DeAndre Ayton, for example, got his fourth foul with like a minute into the third quarter, it was like, and all he did was put his hands up and created the contact and went around him, and it was a foul. And it's just like, it gets ridiculous. And I think, again, that's my takeaway from these two games. There's not much I can take away. I'm not going to sit back and go, you know what? I really learned about the Suns during this time frame because of X, Y, Z. I learned this about Ayton. I learned this about Bridges. I learned this about Paul. I didn't learn really anything because I don't think the Suns were necessarily allowed to. It was a very choppy and sloppy set of games. The Suns lose one, the Suns win one. Let's put these in our pocket and keep on walking towards the playoffs and play the Lakers on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, it was a trick question then by you, right? Asking me what I learned. It is nothing, because even the adjustments from game 1 to game 2 against Minnesota, you even heard them say, like, there's not going to be a whole lot. I mean, there's nothing. These two guys before just went off. There's nothing we can really do. Karl-Anthony Towns is going to put up stats. He's going to do what he does every night. And he's definitely improved. I know he's had some 30-point games earlier in the season when he came back, but you can just tell his body language, everything on the court. He's ready to go. He's ready to actually play these games. So the adjustments weren't really made by Monty, but it's just like they're trying to get through these games, like the last game where I think they just try to get that win, just try to sneak it by, and they couldn't. Same thing in this game, but Chris Paul just had to take over this time in the third quarter instead of waiting until the fourth.
Yeah, and again, even when Monty got ejected, the Suns ultimately went on a 14-0 run at one point, and it seemed like everything was kind of going in their favor. And then, they kind of they let him back in. The refs kind of helped along the way. And to your point, Chris Paul was an absolute man tonight. I mean, 11 of the Suns' 19 points in the third quarter, a quarter in which we didn't score our first points until 7:26. It just goes to show you that his will is so powerful and such a vital part of this team's success moving forward that you need to appreciate what you're watching when you see him. And then he gets his rest. Him and Booker played the entire third quarter. I don't know if you saw that, but like Coach Willie Green, I don't know if he remembered that he could sub players out. He's like, oh shit, I got to
do something.
It's the fourth quarter already. Booker, Paul, take a seat, and then Langston Galloway comes in and lights it up.
But it was like a thing that EJ said last game where it's like you let these guys hang around, and then in the fourth quarter they might beat you. And that's why in the third quarter Chris Paul stepped up. The rest of the team did, but they were left in, I think, just to kind of get him away. Of course, DeAndre didn't even play at all, but you had to have Chris Paul go in there and make a difference. And he did, because you don't want it to be like last night's game where it's the fourth quarter and you're trying to put him away still, trying to get that blowout win that they kept trying to search for last night. And tonight they did that. And it's just because I think on purpose they left him in the game to try to put him away. Plus, I mean, the bench, if you want to get to the bench, I think they played very, very well. Langston Galloway was just phenomenal tonight. And I was going to ask you too, Langston Galloway, like he misses games, DNPs. He is taken away. His minutes are taken away from him. But what has he really done ever to have those minutes taken away? Just like, DA was benched in the fourth because of analytics or whatever. But what is Langston Galloway doing to not have those minutes? When he's playing, he's usually fantastic. Maybe 2 games this year he didn't really show up, but why can't he get minutes like this always in the future? Why? Because we've always, as Suns fans, really wanted him to, get going and stay in the lineup for 20 minutes, maybe, a night, 17 to 20 minutes.
Well, what did I say in the offseason that the Suns was one of their vital needs was solid backup play to Devin Booker, somebody who can keep the offense rolling when D Book sat down at the 2-guard position. Because last year, although in the bubble, we really enjoyed watching Javon Carter and Cameron Payne play together from a defensive intensity standpoint, neither were necessarily going to be relied on for consistent scoring for an entire season. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe for an 8-game stint in Orlando, it makes sense. And then we got Langston Galloway. I know we had an interview with our buddy from, I forget his name. He's such a great buddy. I forget his name. But from Detroit Ballers. And he talked about how Langston Galloway is just a consummate professional, how he's a fire starter, how he's got a great shoe collection, and just what a great pickup he was for the Suns. And then every time we've seen him play, we're amazed by his versatility as a scorer. He's not just your Eddie House type of shooter who has a quick release and can pour in points real quick. He can dribble. He can hit the mid-range shot. He had a great pass to Mikal Bridges on a fast break that led to a dunk this evening. I mean, it was really impressive to see him play in the manner that he does. And I'm right along with you, with a lot of other Suns fans. What does Langston Galloway have to do to become a part of this rotation? I know that when the playoffs come, he might not necessarily be one of our top 8 or 9 players who's constantly in the rotation, but the journey to get there, it seems like having a flamethrower like him come and spell Devin Booker does nothing but positive things for the team. So I don't know what he's necessarily done. I don't know if it's Monty Williams trying to adjust his lineups or try to, experiment with his toys, if you will, and kind of try to, go, okay, well, this is the right lever to pull at this time. Because remember the Detroit game, the one where we're up 23 and then we ended up losing? Langston Galloway had like 14 points in the first half, and then he played like 2 minutes in the second half. Like, I just don't understand it.
No, yeah, it doesn't make any sense. And he's like a sneaky, annoying guy to the other, I think, opposing offense. He's a guy that will get those good rebounds. Like, he'll get you like 1 or 2 sneaky rebounds underneath the rim. And I love that about him because, like you said, his versatility, it's not endless in a way, but it's just like we see more and more and more. The more minutes he gets, it makes sense. The more minutes he's playing, we're going to see more from him. So why do we not see more of it? Because, like you said, like he has a pump fake 3, then he dribbles it up and does a little floater thing, little floater shot. He's so confident. If you watch the replay of how intense that move is, to where he'll get up and the look on his face and the aggression, like it's so much for him to do that on the court, but he's just such a pro at it. And he does this thing where I trust him more than a lot of the guys on the bench.
I do too.
Anything he does, he doesn't really have those plays like Nader. I think Nader, he has a lot of like mistakes on the court, but he still gets a lot of minutes. But Galloway is just so opposite. I never see anything that he does that just frustrates me ever. And if he misses a 3, I get pissed. But I'm just joking. But he's gonna have those games
used to them going in.
Yeah, he goes, but like he'll go 0 for 2, and then it's just like, oh, no more Galloway. Galloway's he's done for the night. It's like, really,
he goes 3 for 4, and he's done for the night. I don't get it.
Exactly.
Kudos to Willie Green for pulling that trigger and using him all night, essentially. Pro Baller 602 in the chat says Cam Johnson is why. I don't necessarily agree with that because Cam Johnson doesn't come in and play the 2-guard. Essentially, you start to see that fluctuation where Cam Payne comes in and he's playing alongside CP3, and then Booker's out there with Etuan Moore. That's kind of the rotation that we've seen throughout the majority of the season. Now, granted, there's been some variations of that, but Langston Galloway, he needs to be that guy. He really does. I mean, he had 14 points tonight. I mean, we'll just start with that. He had 14 points on 4 for 5 from downtown, 5 for 6 shooting, 3 assists and 2 rebounds, and he led all of the bench scoring. And you mentioned it, but the Phoenix Suns bench ended up outscoring the Minnesota Timberwolves bench by 42-32. And the only reason the bench for the Timberwolves had 32 points was the fourth quarter. They had some other bench guys in there who finally put up some stats. At one point, it was like 36-15. I mean, the bench really stepped up and stabilized this game at the end of the third, but most importantly, the beginning of the fourth, when Chris Paul and Devin Booker both sat down. After Willie Green's like, oh man, these guys probably need to take a break. The bench comes in. They had a lineup essentially that had Langston Galloway and campaign with Frank Kaminsky, Mikal Bridges, and Jay Crowder. That was the 5. And in my opinion, that was the unit that played the best all-around basketball of the evening because they were deflecting passes, they were forcing turnovers, and they were hitting their shots. And they began the fourth quarter on 11-3 run that pushed the Suns' lead to 13. And from there, it was ball game.
Yeah, and you can see Jay Crowder, how he's just like that leader on the floor when the rest of the starting lineup's not there. He'll be the guy where everyone looks to kind of like to move things around and kind of just be the glue like he is in the starting lineup. So it's a perfect place for him to be when you have the backup unit in him. I love it. And like you had him in replacing Dario Saric. Dario Saric has to play so many minutes now because of DA's last two games, but Saric had like an off night. I mean, he's like out of place. There's something missing in his game. He's not playing like the point Dario we used to see, where he's at the top of the key, handling the ball. He's like in different spots on the floor. And it probably doesn't make a lot of sense, but he's in like an awful weird place on the court offensively, and nothing's working out for him. I don't know if he's just tired, exhausted from all the minutes he's been playing and the attention he's getting. But I mean, 23 minutes tonight and just 2 points. So you had to have other guys step up, and that's why I think usually when you look at the box score and you look at the bench points, you're going to see Dario stands out as our leader, but it wasn't tonight. So that's why it was closer at 42-32. And then you had to have Galloway add what he did in order for us to even get the win and like take the leap and just take over the game.
Well, but I mean, Dario ultimately, though, you think about this, again, I'm not taking much stock in these two games because they were weird, odd games. DeAndre Ayton, for example, we'll do Ayton watch here momentarily for all of you who are anxiously waiting in the chat to hear us do our takes on Ayton. But due to his foul trouble, Dario Saric played a lot of minutes in these two games. He outplayed Ayton relative to minutes tonight. He had 24. DeAndre Ayton had 18 due to his foul trouble. Okay. It's a bad matchup for him. Typically he's playing the backup center and he has a little bit more fluidity against somebody who has less athletic ability and less diminishing skill set, or somebody who's just essentially not a starter, just like himself. Conversely, he was playing against Karl-Anthony Towns tonight for a lot of his matchups. And then for the second team unit, he just couldn't get his footing. He was stumbling, fumbling, bumbling, all those great, I forget the guy's name, Chris Berman isms, if you will. He's stumbling, bumbling, fumbling. And that was kind of the whole Suns team for through the first 2.5 quarters. I felt like, we talk about DeAndre Ayton and his inability to like catch a ball. That was like the whole team tonight. And Dario was one of them where, they couldn't. It's almost like everyone was playing nervous. So again, 2 points for Dario, probably, the worst 2 games of his career back to back, or not career, but season back to back for sure, without a doubt.
Yeah.
But again, I'm not going to take much stock into it because he had to play such extended minutes in weird roles. I mean, he comes back from the halftime break. He's just sitting down, just gets settled, probably took a little sip of Gatorade, and all of a sudden they're like, you're in, by the way. DA just picked up his 4th a minute in. He's like, oh, shit, I got to go out there, and I have to try to guard Karl-Anthony Towns, who was a 2-time All-Star and somebody who just 2 or 3 years ago, everybody picked as if they could start a franchise and build around one player, be Karl-Anthony Towns. Like, everybody's talking over these past 2 days, essentially, about how, F it. Let's do it.
Watch 2021.
The Suns and Suns fans. Such an odd and unique and weird relationship. Everybody's been talking over these past couple days essentially about, falling last night, how DeAndre Ayton is, is trash and all this stuff. Like anytime the Suns lose, it's DeAndre Ayton's fault. And everybody's blaming essentially DeAndre Ayton for the fact that Karl-Anthony Towns absolutely went off last night. And I actually threw something on Twitter relative to that, talking about, let's see if I can pull it up real quick while I'm talking. That's really a skill that I need to master. So I said, DA didn't give up 41 points, 10 rebounds, and 8 assists to Karl-Anthony Towns last night. He was on cap for a total of 5 minutes and 46 seconds. And gave up 13 points on 4 of 8 shooting, 3 for 5 from deep. Was he outplayed by Cat? Definitely. The 2-time All-Star had himself a night, and DA was in foul trouble. Don't get me wrong. These last two games, DeAndre Ayton, in my opinion, has not played very well. He's allowing himself to get in foul trouble, although a lot of ticky-tacky fouls. I mean, there was that foul we're talking about last night where he was reaching for the ball, and the refs called it on him when he was like going for a guard. The one tonight, his 4th foul was really ticky-tacky, in my opinion. So I think that he didn't have the benefit of getting some calls, and Conversely, he didn't have the ability to get himself going necessarily, and he still has a hard time catching the ball. And he does all those negative things that we talk about, but we got to stop talking about this guy like he's not a top 10 center in the league. I honestly believe we were talking about in our Slack channel today on Bright Side of the Sun how there's probably about 20 teams in the NBA who would probably want to start DA over their starters. So it's a rough couple games, and then you have to go against Karl Anthony Towns, who is somebody who is coming into form after going through one of the roughest years a human being can have. And you have to remember, he's a 2-time All-Star. He's a tough son of a bitch to play and guard, and he put the pressure on DA. And guess what? DA's not as good as him yet. Okay, let's move on.
Yeah, I mean, and DA right now has a leeway of 2 to 3 weeks, really getting adjusted to being a dad. Someone put in the chat, he's playing daddy basketball, and it's true. He is
just like Papa Ricky last year.
We gave it to Papa Ricky earned it, DA's earned it. So 2 weeks, okay, it's fine. But I understand both sides. People want Cat, people want to trade DeAndre Ayton because I mean, if he's not playing, and you see guys like Cat who maybe we can trade for, I understand why they would want him over DeAndre Ayton right now. And then, maybe risk the future, even though Cat is so young, we would still have him for a long time. It's not going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen. I think before we talked about this, I was like, there's no way that we would trade DeAndre Ayton for Cat. But I mean, if that did happen, I think there's a lot of Suns fans too that wouldn't be too upset. I think that it's half and half still on DeAndre Ayton, but I don't know. We can talk about this over and over again and what he's doing on the court and how he's not producing. So I'll just keep saying it. He's just the missing piece. So if he's not on the court because of foul trouble, I'm not going to blame the refs or anybody. I think it's him. It's on him. Whatever he's doing on the court, he will own. And that's what I trust in him. He's going to own up to his own, just his mistakes on the court. Even if he thinks it's just the refs, he needs to learn to play better than that. Because when your situation is playing against these big guys, especially in the playoffs, there's going to be a lot of fouls called. It's going to be very, very rough. So you have to find ways around it. But this is what happened earlier in the season, and he found ways around it. So it's kind of like the insanity of this game where he just kind of just reversed himself in a way to where he's playing like he is in the beginning of the year. And that might be because of the kid. That can be frustrating to watch. So I understand where all the Suns fans are coming from, but they do get frustrated with him. It's kind of sucky, but I mean, it's something we have to deal with, and we just have to fight our way through. No matter how many times Drunk Matthew might want to trade him for DeAndre Drummond or Andre Drummond.
Andre Drummond.
I can't even say his name right. No matter how many times I want to do that. I mean, it's just not going to happen this year. And I'm okay with DeAndre right now, but it's going to be up and down. It's just a bad relationship, John. This relationship is just you sitting there on the couch next to somebody, and there's just more and more things that drive you nuts about him, but you won't leave him or her. And you're just like, yeah, but they do this right, and I like this. What if I lose him and he goes and marries someone else more beautiful, whatever? That's what happens, and I think that's what we're in right now. It's just a really bad relationship with DeAndre in his third year in the NBA, where we got to figure out whether we're going to stick with him or not. And it's not just the Suns fans. I think the players in the Suns front office, they all think the same thing we are. So we're all in this together.
Yeah,
right?
But the rest of the NBA fans think that the Suns fans are a joke as it pertains to DeAndre Ayton, because he's not as horrible. Now, granted, we watch every possession. We overanalyze everything. But it's like Coda Kid says in the chat, and I say this over and over, DA is growing on a winning team. We're 27-13, okay? The sky isn't falling. We're not burning to the ground. This isn't us getting blown out by 20 every night. We just so happen to have a good shooting night, and we beat a team by 2 points. We're winning. We won easily tonight in the second half. It was a really, choppy, shitty game, and the Suns found a way to win because they are a very good and versatile team. They did it without DeAndre Ayton tonight. They almost won last night without DeAndre Ayton tonight. Yeah. So, I mean, they're that good of a team, and he's going to continue to grow. And it's always going to be a topic of discussion. It is the burning point for all Suns fans. That's why we have Ayton Watch here on the Suns Jam Session podcast, is because everybody's always watching DeAndre Ayton. You talk about last night, Anthony Edwards scored 41, 42 points. No one was talking about Mikal Bridges and CP3 getting toasted last night. Everyone's like, man, DA had 6 fouls, and Karl Anthony Towns, a 2-time All-Star, went ape shit. God, he's horrible. It's just like,
but difference, there's a difference. Sorry.
Go ahead.
There's a difference between Mikal and Mikal is grasping things. He's continuing to build his.
So is DA.
DA is, but there's a lot of regression, I feel like, with DA during the season. There is, and it might be just him playing with CP3, but I can see why people don't get mad at Mikal because he's improving so much in year 3. There's nothing expected. He's a later round pick. He wasn't the first overall pick, so that is the main reason that everyone gets on him. But then you also do hear like Bill Simmons and Ryan Russillo. Bill Simmons slipped in the cat for DeAndre Ayton trade, so, and then Russillo's watching DeAndre Ayton, not impressed. A lot of people on these pods are not impressed. Of course, they're not going to be. But, I mean, these are the things we have to be frustrated with the rest of the season. And it does suck. And I'm looking forward to it because it's a good talking point for this podcast.
Well, and also that's part of being a fan. No, we'll never be satisfied. This team could win by 50 points every night, and we'll be like, dude, that one guy on the bench, man, he missed 3 shots. What the fuck, man? I mean, that's part of fandom. It's being fanatical. It's being fantastic. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. There is your 8 and watch for this March 19th, 2021.
These are just reruns by now, right? 8 watches.
Seriously, just go back and watch the last 5 of them. I just saw this tweeted by Kellen Olson, the post game for Devin Booker. Look how he's dressed, man. He looks like he's in the Men in Black. He's Men in Black, right? Dude. No, he's Agent Booker, Agent B. I mean, that's a guy who gets pissed, man. Devin Booker, you look at his performance tonight against the Timberwolves, against Karl Anthony Towns, one of his good buddies, 6 for 18 for 16 points. It wasn't the greatest Booker performance, 7 rebounds and 5 assists. So he did have kind of a full box score, 5 turnovers, 3 of which came in that first quarter. I mean, that first quarter was choppy again for the Phoenix Suns. They ended essentially with 34 points in that first quarter, but it was a little bit of a choppy affair, if you will. Devin Booker, 36 points. He was called upon by Willie Green to carry this team and have some quality minutes in that third quarter, and he only scored 1 point. And that's a couple games in a row where Booker looks a little tired, and he looks, the one thing about the refs, and the reason I bring it up, and we all do, is Devin Booker is almost like one of us out there. When we're pissed off about the refs, like Devin Booker is too. And he acts like we as fans would act if we're at the game. We'd be yelling and screaming at the refs. Booker's doing it for us on the court.
Yeah, and do you feel like that's hurting him, though? I don't know if he needs that. The pissed off Booker thing, was that ever really a thing? I know you used to bring that up and we used to talk about it, but was that a thing where he'd get pissed off and play really good?
No.
So it never was a thing.
No. Okay, so he'd get pissed off and just shoot shitty shots.
Exactly. So that's what the tension he has on the court, I think it's hurting his game. And I think that's one thing he needs to learn from Chris Paul. It's just to slow things down. It's still the game. No one's out there to like try to shank you or anything. I don't know. You know what I mean? He just acts like someone's out there to kill him. And it doesn't have to be that way. I mean, Damian Lillard put it really good in a post-game post-game interview on TNT where he was just talking about how he works effortlessly. And that's what Booker does and things you don't see behind the scenes. But on the court, he knows that other players in the NBA, they get this tension. They get this nervousness towards the end of games. They get too much in their head. That's something that Dame doesn't do. And you can see why he's like the Mr. Big Shot guy he is, because he doesn't have that in his game. I think that's Booker needs to learn to let that tension slide and just be cool on the court. He's a cool dude from watching him on Twitch. He's just a chill guy, right?
Just look at that picture, man.
I know,
he's
exactly. Cool. So he needs to just relax. I mean, I'm not telling him what to do. I'm just saying I think that would really help his game, though. And he's won games for us, of course, this year. He really has. But I think it's been in chill mode Book. Whenever he gets really stressed out and pissed off, it's too much on him. Someone needs to give him like a back rub or something.
Maybe it can be Chris Paul. I don't know. I mean, and that's part of the learning process for Devin Booker. I mean, Chris Paul is somebody who was chippy and he was a little bit fiery tonight too, as he always is. And he channeled that into productivity, and he wasn't necessarily trying to bait the referees into calls for, because what happens to Booker is he'll go down, he'll get fouled, they won't call it, he'll get pissed, he'll get a tech, and then from there on, he's trying to, instead of focus on scoring the ball, he's trying to focus on baiting the refs into giving him a call, and he allows himself to get more and more pissed off. It's like, if he could just, after one of those plays, just hit one of those elbow jumpers and just like see the ball swish in, like that's when he could lock in and go into big dick book mode. But unfortunately, he allows himself to fall victim to the whistles and the egos of the referees, and he doesn't always necessarily it provides us with productive book. You look at tonight, and Karl Anthony Towns had 24 points, right? After having 42 last night. Was it 42 or 41? But they both scored over 40, so screw them both.
That's a lot of points.
And Anthony Edwards had 11 points on 4 for 18 shooting, so he had a really off night. Devin Booker, the guy who carried the Suns last night with 35 points, had 16 points. So I think it's interesting that all three of the guys who really carried the load for their teams last night, outside of Cat, because Cat had 24 points on 9 for 12 shooting. So, I mean, that guy's just a beast, man. But both Booker and Anthony Edwards, I think they were tired from carrying their teams last night.
They were. I think Edwards actually, this might be bad, but he didn't get a lot of calls this game. I thought he got fouled quite a bit and grabbed.
Yeah.
Last night, it was almost like the same kind of game when he came out in the first half, but he wasn't getting the calls. But he was still very, very active on the offensive end. He's still a threat. I was still scared of him. Nothing was really going for him tonight. So I think that's just part of him learning the game, just figuring out what goes where, stuff like that. Because honestly, I think the refs kind of, shorthanded him on a couple calls. And
sure.
They already threw out 40 fouls. But those are calls I'm talking about. I'm like, oh, that should have been a foul. Oops, that should have been a foul. That's what I was thinking when he was going to the rim, but they just weren't calling it for him. But it was a rough night, but he still is just, he's still a threat. You can see the promise there. I was excited to kind of watch him to see how he would adjust to the Suns, which didn't really have an adjustment against him, but just how well he would play the second night. I still thought he played pretty well. The points weren't there, but he's still there. He just made a few mistakes and just didn't get the calls.
Yeah, he had a total of 7 turnovers. I mean, so he had 11 points, 10 rebounds, 6 assists, and 7 turnovers. So, and what's crazy is, we talked about it last night on the podcast. We were wondering how Monty was going to change his rotations and how he was going to try to defend him, and he didn't change anything. I mean, it was essentially, I saw a lot of CP3 on him. I didn't see Bridges on him very much. Bridges was guarding McDaniels like the whole time. And I was like, okay, this is really interesting. And so the Suns really attacked the Timberwolves in the same manner, and they just weren't necessarily hitting the shots. I know he was taking a bunch of threes last night. He only shot 8 threes. Well, only 8 threes. That led the team. That led all shooters from 3. But he was only 3 from 8 tonight, and he just couldn't get himself in that offensive rhythm, partially because he wasn't getting to the free throw line with the same regularity he was last night. And I feel like there wasn't just a lot of calls necessarily made for him from a team standpoint. He's a kind of an ISO player, but last night there was a lot of Karl Anthony Towns allowing himself to do what he's doing. Then he'd pass to a cutting Edwards, or when he was wide open behind the 3. And I mean, that's kind of reflected in the fact that Karl Anthony Towns, who had those 8 assists or 9 assists last night, only had 1 tonight. So the Suns, I don't know if the Timberwolves, the Suns adjusted to them defensively, or it felt like more of the Timberwolves just showed why they're the worst team in the NBA. They just can't knock down a lot of shots. Last night they got hot, and they was at the right time for them. The Suns had a 15-point lead in the third quarter and a 9-point lead in the fourth quarter, and they went cold, and that's right when they got hot, and they ultimately won the game. So, again, I think that this team they're fun to watch. I like the Wolves. The jerseys were a lot nicer tonight, so I'm not going to ask you the jersey. Right? Yeah, easier on the eyes tonight, but they're a team that I like to watch until D'Angelo Russell's in there. Then everything's just kind of discombobulated.
Yeah, it's interesting what they're going to do in the future. I'm excited, even though they play in the West. It's nice how everything's kind of spread around. All these teams have like their one star or their grooming star that they're just grooming. And not like R. Kelly grooming, but just grooming to where they can take over the franchise, earn money the legal way.
That's a great way to put it. Non-R. Kelly way. A little bit of poop poo, a little bit of that peep beep.
A lot of poop talk tonight. Never know what's going to happen.
Yeah, welcome to Sun's Jam Session, where it's all dick and fart jokes. Mikal Bridges 7 for 9 from the field for a total of 17 points, 6 rebounds, 3 assists, and he did the majority of his damage in that second half. He had 7 first half points, 10 second half points, and like I mentioned earlier, he was a part of that unit with Langston Galloway and Cameron Payne at the guard position at the beginning of the fourth quarter. Mikal Bridges is the one who thrived in that opportunity. He played a total of 35 minutes, which led the Phoenix Suns tonight outside of Booker's 36, and he was a plus 14 tonight. So another solid performance for Bridges, where in the first half, he didn't look like he was necessarily part of the game plan, and that's typical for Bridges. He's like Marion kind of. Marion was never part of the offensive game plan, still put up a fantastic box score. Obviously, Bridges isn't anywhere near that level, but just another solid game from him. And you mentioned a little bit earlier with DeAndre Ayton how he's continuing to learn, just like Bridges is continuing to learn, and there's different expectations and things of that nature, and how it seems like DA doesn't necessarily grasp things, whereas Mikal Bridges does. And I think tonight's a good example of that. And these last two games have been a good example of that. It's like he just continues to grow, man. It's just, God, I love Mikal Bridges.
He knows his spots on the floor now. He knows exactly what to do. He's not throwing up garbage like he used to. Like, he just knows what to do with the ball. And like, tonight was a quiet game until the fourth, where he came alive with a big three and then the dunk after the steal from some other player on the Suns. And then it led to a dunk from Mikal Bridges. That was just, the tipping point of the offense really just taking over the game. And he was a big help in that way. I just think that Mikal right now, we say he's building on everything, and he's continued to add more to his game, and it's completely true. But he already has like a base, right? I mean, he has his 3-pointer, the corner shot, which is really fantastic from, and then he also has like the little drive, the little fade away in the paint. That's fantastic to have. So he knows what he can do right now that will give the Suns the best opportunity to score, and he continues to do that. So, like you said, like, there's not a lot of plays called for him, but he's gonna be there when needed, and that's the one thing. The consistency that will go into next year. That's the one thing year 4 where he'll just be consistent. He'll be like a Devin Booker. He's going to put up the same kind of stats, the same kind of like attitude. Everything will be there next year for him to be consistent. So this year he's getting there. He really is, and it's really impressive.
Yeah, I absolutely love him, and I really think that he's going to garner a big contract when it comes down to it. I don't know if it's going to be $25 million, but he's probably a $20 million a year player. And this offseason, that's going to be kind of the big decision that we'll be talking about on the Jam Session podcast, and all Suns fans will be talking about after whatever happens in the playoffs is, okay, now you have to decide who to pay. And that's one thing, again, I was, we talk about all these areas of opportunity, and should the Suns beat the Wolves, and we lost last night and all this stuff. It's like, if you just take a step back and you look at this 27-13 squad, look at how it's constructed. Okay. 3 of the starting 5 are guys who you drafted. Okay. Devin Booker, Mikal Bridges, DeAndre Ayton. Then you have Chris Paul, a Hall of Fame point guard, playing for you. And then your 4 is either Jay Crowder, a seasoned veteran who's been in the playoffs every year except his first year as a pro, Frank Kaminsky, who is Frank Kaminsky. I don't have much to say there. Or if Cam Johnson gets a start, it's another guy you drafted. So, to think where we were just 3 years ago to where we are now, we don't get all bent out of shape because DeAndre Ayton didn't dunk the ball. Don't get bent out of shape because we had an off night and we turned the ball over 22 times and we fouled the opposition 30 times and we ended up with a 5-point loss. It's like, this is the NBA. Anybody can beat anybody on any night, and we're still a good team. And you mentioned at the top of the pod, Matthew, and kudos to you for saying it. There's still a lot of growing and a lot of learning to do for this team. And this is part of the journey. This is the fun part. This is why you and I do this podcast, because it's fun to watch this team and go, hey, look at Mikal. Like, I see him growing. He's getting to his spots. He knows where to go on the fast break. He knows when to cut, and he's realizing how long he is. So it's like, if he just gets there, and his teammates are realizing how long he is, like that pass that Langston Galloway threw to him was fantastic, because it's like only Mikal Bridges could have got that, because that was like a low and away slider, and because he's so go gadget armsy, he can grab it and dunk it on the same play. It's like, it's just so much fun, man.
Yeah, and then I'm the guy to say it's okay to, criticize the Suns and be all over them, because, Coach Monty is doing it. Even like 2 press conferences ago, he's talking about, we expect more from DA. So if that's still going on, he's expecting more from these players, like we should as well, because they are actually having the opportunity to have one of the best seasons in Phoenix Suns history this season. So to build on that and just complete the season in a good way, I mean, the best way would be a championship, but a good way to go into next season is just being the best that they can be. I mean, it's something that we expect out of this team now, right? So it's okay, I think, to be upset, because we do expect what we see, greatness. Like when we saw DeAndre Ayton play those 4 games that were fantastic, and then we expect that for forever, because we've seen this team play on all cylinders, like 100%. So that's what we expect now from every night, every game.
I can't wait until they put it all together for like one full game, because we've seen it in spurts. We've seen it in like a half or like, a quarter, where you're like, oh man, this is the Phoenix Suns now. Like, this is fun. And actually a couple of those games we lost early in the seasons, we were getting our butts kicked. or we were kicking butt, is when we gave up, big leads to, I think Sacramento might have been a game, and I know that Detroit was another one where you're just like, well, what happened? We were playing so well. It's like we almost get too laxed as a team, and the Suns will always make you pay for feeling lax at any time.
And you know that we were actually a really, really good team when like Chris Vernon was talking about how he's a reporter. I don't know if he still does reporting for the Memphis Grizzlies, but he's like at every game.
Yeah,
but when he's texting his buddy and he's saying he's watching the Suns like live in person, and he's saying this team's gonna be a bitch in the playoffs to ever close out, you're good. Because when these media guys are watching teams on the sideline, you get the full experience, and they know basketball at its fullest. When they start making comments like that, your team's that good, and you know what is expected out of them every night.
Man, the one disadvantage of working right now is I haven't listened to like any podcasts all week. It's like work, come home, watch Suns game, write about the Suns game, because I just I did the game.
You can't at your job, right? You can't walk around with the iPod on, right?
Yeah, no, I'm just too busy. I'm just way too busy. It's spring break, so it's just it's bonkers everywhere. So it's like I haven't listened to any podcasts. We actually have our fantasy baseball draft. I don't know if you know this on Monday.
Yeah,
that's this Monday. The keeper league.
Next Monday.
Nope, we have two. We have one this Monday, one the next Monday. The big money league is 2 weeks out.
I am screwed.
We have 3 days until the keeper league. Who are you keeping?
Already put them in there.
Who do you got?
I don't remember their names.
Oh my God, I could probably look it up.
Johnny Soto.
Juan Soto. You have Juan Soto. I'm keeping Bieber and Ramirez. But anyways, that's on Monday. So like this weekend, I got to like prep for the draft. So, anyways, I digress.
Jam star of the game.
If you're watching along live with us, Jamsters, go ahead and do me a couple favors. 1, let us know who your jam star of the game is. And 2, make sure you subscribe, rate, review, hit that thumbs up button if you're watching on YouTube, and subscribe because we're ever so close to 900 subscribers. All right, Matthew, who do you have as your jam star of the game in this victory over the Minnesota Timberwolves?
I'm going to give it to Chris Paul and Langston Galloway. It's a tough one because I kept seeing in the chat Galloway should get it, and it's totally true. I think he's earned it tonight because he got the minutes. He proved to the Suns he should be playing more than 10 minutes a game, and he should be playing every game. All right, there shouldn't be an argument. F analytics. This guy needs to be in the lineup. I think he's earned it, so I'm going to give it to him and Chris Paul just because Chris Paul did his thing in the third quarter to help the Suns lock this one up, and that's why we got Chris Paul on this team. Whenever he has an off night, we might struggle to win, but when he gets it going, except for that one game against Brooklyn. that was insane. Where we actually lost that game. Usually, we're gonna win these games.
Yeah, I mean, as I was watching, I was thinking the same thing. It's like, okay, is it Langston? Is it CP3? Is it the bench squad just all together? The way that they kind of stabilized the starters and helped them out. You look in the chat. Gary Pickney says Langston. You have Alex Kroll says Langston. Kanye says Monty, and I mean, he. Potentially, like the one thing I want to see his presser after this game. Coda Kid says Gallo's the jam star. Los Suns says Galloway. Let's see. Jones and Since 80 says CP3 cooked Karl-Anthony Towns on every switch, so he's the jam star, which is a great point. Rubio is what Pedro said. Papa Ricky. Yes, Suns fans. CP3 is who Code gives it to. We also have, let's see, CP3 is MVP from CJ Sandoval. CP3 from Jay Pizzle, Jam Stars from Mario Lopez says Payne, Galloway, McHale, Crowder, and Frank. So he's saying that unit that started the fourth quarter, those are the Jam Stars. That's a really good call right there. I might actually agree with that. But you said Langston, so I'll just give and then one more. I got Nico Corral says Galloway as well. I'm going to go ahead and just say CP3 because we know it's Gallo, but I also want to just give a shout out to CP3 because he really was a stabilizing force. As I mentioned, the Minnesota Timberwolves were down 10 points entering the second half. They scored 15 points before the Suns scored a point. And that could be essentially the impact of DeAndre Ayton. DeAndre Ayton goes out of the game, boom. It's a negative 15 for everybody else outside of him. And then CP3 just starts to stabilize the offense. He comes down, he hits a mid-range jumper, he's got a 3, he's starting to pass the ball. 11 of the 19 points that the Suns scored in that quarter were from Chris Paul. And then you look at the fourth quarter after him and Devin Booker both get a 5-minute respite. He comes in and hits a 3. And then he starts orchestrating the offense. And I see him coaching in the timeouts on guys and where they need to be. And again, his leadership is just something that's so vital. We talk about it a lot on this podcast. We don't give Devin Booker and Chris Paul enough credit and we're always looking at the role players around them. I'm giving one of our all-stars the credit tonight, and I'm going to go ahead and give him the jam star of the game.
Oh man, he's earned it, and like he just slowed the game down tonight too. Like basically, just just take this easy, guys. We're playing the Wolves. Let's just get this over with, all right?
Yep, yeah. So that's my jam star of the game for this one.
Guess what?
All right, so we asked this last night: who wins this game, the Suns or the Wolves? Matthew, we both got this right. We both said the Suns. That puts me at 15-10 on the season. You are now at 17-8, so I'm
almost
2 games
legal
behind you. Almost legal. You're almost at that 18, and I can almost drive. All right, if we're going to go that route. So obviously, the next game is this upcoming Sunday against the Los Angeles Lakers, the last game of a 5-game homestand for the Phoenix Suns. Big game. Let's go through a couple over-unders and more or less kind of things. Who has more assists in this game, CP3 or LeBron James?
I'm going to go CP3. I think he shows up in this game over LeBron. I think he does. Takes that MVP away from him.
I'll pick your boy. You love LeBron. LeBron's going to have to orchestrate that offense, so I'm going to say him. Over-unders total points for the Suns, 121.5.
Under. Slow game. 2 old guys. Well, not old. They're our age. Going at it. They're trying to get the one against each other. Buddies. They're pals. So it's gonna be a slow game, I think. Under.
Okay. I was gonna say the same thing. It's gonna be under. It'll be like, the Suns win 107-103 or something.
Yeah.
On that note, who wins, Suns or Lakers? So tell me about this game. Tell me what you're excited about. Tell me what we're looking at here before you tell me who's gonna win.
This is like a low key game for MVP race. I brought this up like a couple weeks ago. CP3 maybe he can like earn his way into a mention for MVP, but the way the Suns are playing, the way they play as well as the CP3 plays now, it's a big deal. LeBron, I said that he was out of the race. I really did. But he's actually played way better after All-Star break. He's winning without Anthony Davis. So what I'm looking for in this game is how do you slow down LeBron? Oh, you don't. You put McHale on him and you try your darndest, all right? It's the guys around him. How is the coverage? How is the switching going to help the Suns on defense to get to these guys that are going to be open from 3? Rest in peace, Jared Dudley won't be in this game. He's injured. He's out. But the rest of the team, I mean, if they can get good coverage, they can swarm these guys quick. They'll have a chance against the Lakers. It's just whether or not they're going to do that.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. They're still without Anthony Davis. He's not back yet, out with the Achilles injury. Marc Gasol is currently day-to-day with health and safety protocols. So they're definitely getting depleted on the front line. This is a team that the Suns beat by 10 earlier in March. And this is the second game of 3 games that we play against the Los Angeles Lakers. So it's big potentially if it comes down to playoff seeding somewhere down the line. If we can win this game, we win the season series against the Lakers. So that's maybe an extra motivation for the Suns if they choose to try to find ways to get motivated to play your rival. The Lakers are a team that have won their last 4 games coming out of the All-Star break. So they're a team that's starting to feel that rhythm. They're starting to, I wouldn't say gel necessarily, but they're starting to find out who they are outside of Anthony Davis, because they kind of have had a rocky road, the Suns being part of that rocky road that they faced once Anthony Davis went out. They beat the Charlotte Hornets last night, and that actually propelled them into the number 2 overall spot into the Western Conference, and the Suns are currently number 3. Before that, they beat the Minnesota Timberwolves, they beat the Warriors, and they beat the Pacers. So, I mean, they're a team that is definitely trending upwards, and LeBron is going to do that. He's somebody who does see the larger picture. He sees the playoffs for what they are. The regular season is just a ramp up, and he's starting to get himself really kind of ramped up after the All-Star game to get this team into the position where he thinks it's going to be. So don't you think for any 1 second that this team, although they're down Anthony Davis and Marc Gasol, that LeBron James isn't going to do anything that he can to try to will this team to victory. This will be a dogfight. I agree with you. It will be more of a low-scoring game. It's going to be more of a defensive struggle, and it's going to be interesting because we talk about the ability to close out games, right? These are the kind of games you got to have the ability to close out. These are the games where you need DA to step up. If they got a depleted front line, you need DA to go out there and just give me 15 and 10 DA, and I'm happy with that. Give me 45 and 30. Come on, what?
Just don't ask him to do anything, please.
I know he's a new
Please.
father. He's just,
No, it's a two. Okay, just tomorrow night against the Lakers, you got to win, man. And I don't want to hear any Lakers
not
fans
tomorrow
in
night,
there, right?
Sunday night.
Sunday night, sorry,
Yeah.
back to back games.
Yeah, the triple back-to-back.
In the future will happen.
I don't know if this is necessarily an MVP race, though. I mean, if anybody on the Suns is going to win the MVP, in my opinion, it'd have to be Booker just due to
Really?
statistics. Yeah, okay, and I get the whole thing. I get the whole Charles
Yeah.
Barkley argument, but I just think in this
Well-
day and age, given the way statistics kind of dominate everything, nobody ever really looks at the true valuable player. They look at the best player, and that's what that award has essentially become. And the best player doesn't always win it. I mean, Giannis Antetokounmpo won it last year. He's the best player in the NBA, in my opinion. Okay. So I just think that Steve Nash was really kind of the last time you saw somebody win an MVP for truly just being the most valuable player, the guy who went to a team that was playing at subpar levels and accelerated them to the top of the league. When's the last time that happened outside of Steve Nash?
Chris Paul this year.
I hope you're right. That'd be fantastic.
And honestly, I mean, we can talk about stats, but you can give it to Book, but Book is not the reason. I mean, he's a big reason we're winning, but he's not the reason this thing's turned around. It's Chris Paul. So you can look at that. And the media, they love storylines, man. So if you want to give LeBron one last MVP or maybe try to get him two more before he's done, that's a good storyline. But Chris Paul hasn't won anything.
True.
He hasn't won the MVP. He hasn't won the championship yet. If the Suns can finish over the Lakers in the standings, it's going to be a real question. It doesn't have to do with what Charles Barkley said. I know he made good points, but it's just the length of the season and how much Chris Paul, he hasn't taken any nights off. You know what I mean? A lot of us expected him to take some nights off. He hasn't. Maybe on the court, he's had some off nights of being tired, but he's still there for his team. And if he can get DeAndre Ayton towards the last half of the season playing stellar, that is another reason why he might want to, a reason he can earn the MVP.
It could be a legacy award. You're right. So, but the Suns got to win, and they got to win games like this.
Yeah.
So,
That's all I
Matthew,
care about.
who wins on Sunday? Suns or Lakers?
Suns by 15. I think Suns come out and it's going to be a slow-paced game, but I think the Suns pull away. I could just see LeBron getting his 5th foul or something stupid, and everyone cheering. DeAndre Ayton gets his 12th point of the night. It's going to be a crazy wild game.
I'll tell you this. Okay. I'm 2 games behind you. I have an opportunity potentially as we play the team that's better than us to make up some ground. So I could pick the Lakers here and an opportunity to do so. But then I look at the rest of the schedule and I go, you know what? I might be able to sneak one away from you there. There's no way I can predict the Lakers to win this game. Suns are going to win by a total of 4 points. It's going to be 107-103. You heard it here first.
You put a score out there.
Yeah. Suns Jam Session Podcast. I'm calling it 107-103. Phoenix Suns win. I work with a bunch of Lakers fans, and I'll tell you what, it was really fun beating them last time. And I knew that one of the guys came in at 1:30. So I hit on the radio at 1:30. I'm like, hey, Marvin, where are you at? And he's like, he just goes, damn it, on the radio. and then I hear nothing. And I hear, you didn't have Anthony Davis. And I'm like,
good excuse.
All you have are excuses. You still got to play the team in front of you. So let's go, Suns. Let's go, Suns.
Yeah, dude.
Let's beat those Lakers. We're looking forward to hanging out with the Jamsters on Sunday night after a Suns victory, baby.
Yeah, we are, and it's gonna happen. All right, we're gonna be cheersing on a Sunday night. No Sunday night blues, just a bunch of good vibes.
Heck yeah, and I don't work Monday, so let's make it a good time.
All right. Is
there anything? Did you do a bracket this year?
No, I stayed out of it. I'm not even gonna watch any college basketball. Really, I'm gonna watch a lot of highlights, but I don't think I'm gonna watch any games.
So I filled one out. I have watched 0 college basketball, and here's one of the reasons why. The Suns aren't going to have a lottery pick this year. I don't have to care about college basketball this year. It's fantastic. It's a weird season. Duke's not even in the tournament. North Carolina, I guess, lost today. It just whatever. So I did fill out a bracket because I do it every year. I have Illinois winning the whole thing because that's where Eddie Johnson went. I'm like, I'm going to stick with Matthew's dad. He went to the University of Illinois. That's why I pick him to win it all. I literally watched my first 6 minutes of basketball today. I heard Ohio State lost, and they were number 2 seed. And so they lost to a 15 seed. And I was like, oh, shit. I had them in my Elite 8 losing to Purdue.
Ohio.
And then
Ohio
Purdue
State.
Lost. So my whole one side of my whole bracket's just red. I'm like, yeah, good. I didn't watch it, nor do I care. So if the Illinois wins, I have a shot of winning $300. If they don't, oh well, I lost 10. So
yeah.
But in hindsight, I was like, you know what? We should have done a Suns Jam Session bracket thingamabobber. And we're sorry that we failed you, Jamsters. We're better than that. We have a fantasy basketball league that I haven't adjusted my lineup in a long time. We're just bad people, and for that we apologize.
It's a weird year, man.
It is.
Fantasy basketball, there's weird injuries, COVID. You can't really count this year. Next year, it's going to be fully, we're going to have gift cards to give out and all that stuff. Right?
Yes, and
There you go.
merchandise.
Outback Steakhouse.
Hats
15
like
bucks
this.
to Outback Steakhouse. Yeah, there you go.
I got to say, as two guys who run a fantasy basketball league, for our listeners, we are like the DeAndre Ayton of fantasy basketball commissioners.
Trade us away.
Trade us, send us off so you can get Karl Anthony Towns. Send DeAndre Ayton to Minnesota. A guy who makes like $9 million for a guy who makes like $27 million. Like, good call. That makes sense. All right. And speaking of making sense, I said we were going to keep this short before we got on here, and we're just about to hit an hour. So this is a reminder to
You're not supposed to
everybody
say that.
subscribe to the Bright Side of the Sun podcast network wherever you get your podcasts. On Apple, go ahead and give us some reviews. If you're watching along live with us on YouTube, thank you. Please subscribe, hit the thumbs up button. We appreciate it. Helps with the algorithms, lets other Suns fans know if they want to come and hang out with some buddies at the end of the game, this is the place to be, the Suns Jam Session podcast. You can follow the show at Suns Jam on Twitter. You can follow me on Twitter at Darth Voida. You can follow Matthew on Twitter.
At Matthew Lissy.
And that's it for this game and this night. We'll see you on Sunday night, Suns fans.
Yes, everybody. My face does get shinier as the pod goes. Everyone go home and love your family.
It's because you're sweating.